In this video, we're going to be taking a look at the Much i5s. It's an Android video game player slash phone. So the Much i5s is pretty similar to your average portable game console, something like the PS Vita. As you can see, it has two analog sticks. It has your face buttons, your D-pad. It has only two shoulder buttons, similar to the Vita. And on the top over here you have a flap which opens up to reveal your USB and HDMI adapter. The bottom over here has another flap which you can open up, and it has your headphone jack and another USB port, or at least I think it's a USB port or charging port. On the front you have a camera which is not that great, but you know, it's a pretty average front-facing camera. You have your back speakers. I'm not a fan of this, even though these speakers get pretty loud. It's kind of strange why they would put back-facing speakers. I mean, yeah, well, I guess it's a design decision because your front has your microphone and your earpiece for when you're making phone calls. When I got this device, everything was in Chinese, since it is aimed towards the Chinese market and Chinese consumers. But it was an easy fix after I installed Nova Launcher, and you know, it was all good from there. It's a pretty clean interface. I did forget to mention this does have hardware buttons on the front: your home key, your menu key, your back key. Now, the really interesting thing about this is, when you go into system settings, you can personalize these keys. So you can turn these keys into start select for when you're gaming or you require those kind of keys. And before going too much into those things, let me go at the about section. So this is running 4.2.2, and I'm not sure if they have an update yet for this for 4.4. I don't know if they'll have one, but the specs are they're decent. It's a 1.5 gigahertz CPU from MediaTek and a PowerVGR 544 GPU, which is decent enough. Most of the Chinese brands usually have the Mali GPU, so this is a step up from that. And unlike the i5 version, this one is the i5s, so it has a 1.5 gigahertz CPU, which is quite a bit more powerful, and you might feel the effect in some of your games. So let's get into the controls a little bit. Now, I like the setup. This setup is pretty good for people with small hands, but since my hands are pretty big, as you can see, they're like giant, it's a little bit uncomfortable for me to use. But still, it's a decent enough setup, something like an Xbox 360 controller where you have one analog stick here and one on the lower. I would have preferred if they were both here, but oh well. The keys, these keys are decent. The face keys are okay. The D-pad is stiff, so you have to get used to it while playing games. Some people might get used to it, some people might not. You know, again, that's a personal choice. It's the same thing with the D-pad. The D-pads are a bit stiff, but since my thumbs are pretty big too, it's also slippery for me, so it's pretty uncomfortable. But I have seen reviews where people are okay with the analog stick being small and tiny, but you know, I guess it's okay for them. For me, it's not. But one complaint I do have about the analog sticks is that they are very, very stiff. They're not loose enough. I guess with use and with time this would change, but I don't know. They're pretty tight. So let's get into some games. To start with, I'm going to start with Modern Combat 4. And this is a pretty GPU intensive game. Just over here you see the small box. This is actually your gamepad mapper, and right now it's at default settings. It downloads mapping similar to the NVIDIA Shield or any other mapping software. It's not as good as TinCore, but it's okay, it's usable. Some games recognize the controls right away and it's not an issue, but then you have some games that simply just don't work because this does not use standard hit controls. It uses their own weird sort of driver. So I mean, you know, So you can see the performance is pretty smooth. I played a lot of this game on this device, and it was smooth most of the way. I didn't have any issues. The screen is a 720p IPS display, which is very surprising coming from a Chinese manufacturer, because usually they put pretty shitty screens on their gaming devices. But this one has a very nice IPS screen, the colors pop, and yeah, as you can see, the gameplay is very smooth. Even the later levels, I can't tell if the graphics are, what setting the graphics are on, but I would assume they're on high because it has all of these smoke and light effects. You can see the smoke over there. So this is definitely running on high, and it's very smooth. Not as smooth as an iPhone, but it is good enough. So I'm gonna quit out this game and let's try another popular game. I'm trying Gameloft games because you know they tend to be the most intensive. So this is Asphalt 8. I did have some problems with Asphalt 8. It doesn't run that well on medium settings, but I don't think that's because of the GPU. I guess it's more got to do with the optimization with the MediaTek chip. So you can see this is running on low, and it runs very smooth at low. In medium you'll notice quite a bit of lag. Not too much, but you will notice it. I prefer these settings and I recommend you play at these settings. And as you might have guessed, this device is good for emulators. Yep, it is great for emulators. I do have drastic. So you can see the colors are very good. The movement is solid. The keys are stiff, you know, I mean, what are you going to do about that? It's a fair sacrifice, I guess. I'll get into that later. So this is the NDS emulator running. Let me exit out of this. Another game we can try is Magic Rampage. I love this game. This is one of my favorite platforming games, and I really love this. I've been playing this on my Galaxy Note 2014. So again, you can see there is no lag, even though this is a very simple game. There is no lag or ghosting on the screen, which is not much of an issue on modern devices. And the controls are pretty solid, even though I'm gonna die pretty soon. Oh, but I killed him. Whoa, I killed him too. And the colors really do pop. You might not notice it in this video, but the colors do pop quite a lot. Now you might want to see some of the phone functions, but I haven't used this device as a phone, to be honest. I never bought it as a phone, but you can use it as a phone. It has calling functionality, so there you go. There's your phone. Oh well, I've locked the display so you can't see it, but you know, you can type your numbers. It has all the same basic functionalities as Android would, so you can have a phone. Some things I haven't mentioned: this has 16 gigs of inbuilt memory. I don't know about the i5 version, but the i5s has 16 GB of inbuilt memory. It does have an SD card slot, which is on the back. I'm not going to open it because it's tough and it might break, so I don't want to do that. So in conclusion, this is a good device. It's pretty lightweight. I think I've explained most of the features, and if you want more details, you could probably head to the forums and you could find that out in the Dingoinity forums. It has a back-facing camera with flash, and it's okay, you know. I wouldn't really buy this device for camera purposes. As a gaming device, it's solid. You might ask, is it as good as the GPD G7? Now see, that's a really hard question to answer. I would say there's some aspects about this that I like, which are better than the GPD, but then some not. The specs are much better than the GPD. I would have loved to see a GPD device with an IPS screen and a 1.5 gigahertz quad-core CPU and this GPU, but you know, the controls are not as good as the GPD G7. I mean, they're simply not there. It's missing shoulder buttons, so game streaming is not an option on this because it's literally missing like 4 buttons. It has no click. Android games are decent enough, emulators are decent enough, but again, that depends, you know. movement keys are pretty stiff. The analog keys are pretty stiff. That's about it. I hope you liked the video. And if you liked it, go ahead and click like. If you didn't like it, go ahead and dislike it. And I hope you subscribe. Thank you for watching.